Next thing you know, at 37, I was 315 pounds. I went to my physician and she kept talking to me over the years about how much I was gaining weight. Finally, she said to me at 37, she said, if you don't change what you're doing with your family history of heart disease, she goes, I'd be willing to bet $100 you'll probably have a stroke or a heart attack at 40.
Butch has a bachelor's in aging sciences and is a self-proclaimed muscle nerd. He is also the founder of MuscleRepairShop.com, a company dedicated to helping people recover faster, move better, and live pain-free using advanced muscle repair and recovery techniques.
When you start understanding how the fiber reduces the absorption of the glucose into your bloodstream, and that reduces your insulin spikes, and all of a sudden, that simple formula starts to help you look at things differently in how you take it in. Now, all of a sudden, losing the weight becomes easy. So all my friends were like, you're losing all this weight, this makes no sense. You don't even look like you're working hard. And I go, I'm not, because
Hi, my name is Chris Burris. I'm a longevity expert and the chief scientist at a lab focused on a longevity molecule. My primary focus is to help people live longer and better lives with science. Make sure to subscribe and share so you and your friends can live longer and better, so you and your friends can live beyond the norms.
Hi, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Beyond the Norms Health and Longevity Podcast. What if most muscle pain, injuries, and aging joints aren't caused by aging at all, but by recovery protocols that are completely backwards? What if your muscles could fully repair themselves after workouts, injuries, or chronic pain? How different would your life look? Our next guest, Butch Phelps, has a solution. A little bit about Butch. Butch has a bachelor's in aging sciences and is a self-proclaimed muscle nerd. He is also the founder of MuscleRepairShop.com, a company dedicated to helping people recover faster, move better, and live pain-free using advanced muscle repair and recovery techniques. With years of hands-on experience working with athletes, active adults, and individuals dealing with chronic pain or lingering injuries, Butch focuses on restoring the body's natural repair mechanisms rather than masking symptoms. Butch is the author of the award-winning Stretch and Release book, Stretch and Release, and has a mission to challenge the narrative that pain is inevitable by showing how proper recovery strategies can dramatically improve quality of life, athletic performance, and healthy aging. Hopefully, we can help him with that mission today with this interview. Butch, thank you so much for joining us today.
thanks a lot, Chris. Good to be here.
So before we jump into your area of expertise, which I'm excited to dive into, I always like to go further back. I like to go much further back.
Okay.
What was it like growing up, little Butch? Where did you grow up? What were your parents like? And if there was some event or someone you could pinpoint as the reason you would ultimately become a public speaker, a published author, what or who would that be?
So that's a great question. I grew up in southern North Carolina, Wilmington to be exact. My mother and father were very active in my life. I played a lot of sports. My dad was an athlete as well. He played semi-pro baseball into his 20s. But they always supported me in athletics. So I worked hard on farms, but I also played football, basketball, and baseball and kept myself in great shape. Then I grew up. And I got into a little bit of training in my 20s as a trainer, as I worked in a corporate job with the New York Times, and never really thought a lot about what I'm doing today, to be honest with you. In fact, at 18, I was in a serious car accident that left me with a broken pelvis and a broken left arm. And I remember back then, I said to the doctor, because he said to me, well, when I asked him, I said, so I guess you'll probably put a rod or something in my arm because the arm had broken completely in two and maybe plates in my pelvis. And he said, no, sir. He said, I believe if the good Lord wants you to have metal in your body, you come that way. He said, you're a strong young man. You'll be fine. And my dad said to him, he said, well, when he gets older, is he going to have problems? He said, no, bones don't hurt. Soft tissue is what hurts, not bones. And I healed fine. I listened to what he said. Some of it was fun. Some of it was not so fun. But I listened to what he said. He got me back on the road. And I just sort of like, okay, I got through that. That's fine. I'm heading on into my life. And I got married in my 20s. I had a couple of kids. And then we got a divorce in the mid-90s. And my wife with my two kids moved back to North Carolina. I was still here in Florida. And of course, you're sitting around feeling sorry for yourself for a while. And I got into eating a lot of pizzas from Pizza Hut and KFC and started gaining weight. And next thing you know, at 37, I was 315 pounds.
Wow.
And I went to my physician, and she kept talking to me over the years about how much I was gaining weight. And finally, she said to me at 37, we did all these blood tests. She said, if you don't change what you're doing with your family history of heart disease, she goes, I'd be willing to bet $100 you'll probably have a stroke or a heart attack at 40. And that was my wake-up call. And she had just gone back to school, had studied nutrition. And she said, I can help you, but you got to be willing to do the work. And so I called her up a week later and I said, okay, I'm ready to roll. Let's do this. So over the next 18 months, she taught me how to change my entire viewpoint on food and how to eat differently. And in 18 months, I lost 105 pounds. And got back to working out because I had learned as a trainer, obviously. So I got back to working out to get in shape. And by the time I hit 40, I certainly didn't have a stroke or a heart attack, but I had back pain so bad that I'd literally crawl out of my car on my hands and then pull myself up by the door handle. And I would go the typical route. I go to doctors, I go to PT, they give me medications. Some of them offered me injections and some said, at some point you may need surgery or whatever. And I thought that just doesn't seem quite right. And I decided to go to actually massage school and study neuromuscular and sports massage at 41. Let
me pause here for a second, right?
Yeah.
So a couple interesting things. She changed your viewpoint on food.
Yes.
When you say viewpoint on food, like what is that? I mean, obviously you were in a bit of a depression for some of that period, and then maybe just didn't get out of it, right? Like maybe you weren't depressed per se, but talk about that change in perspective on food, because certainly there's somebody in the audience who could appreciate that.
Absolutely. That is a great question, and I'm glad you picked up on that. So most people, when they think of diets, and I said the same thing to her, what kind of diet am I going to go on? And she said, we're not going to go on a diet. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, we're going to change not only what you eat, but help you learn how to decide what food is good for you and what food is not good for you. And I said, so we're not going to have calories? She goes, no calorie counting, no deprivation, none of this stuff. I'm going to teach you to have a different mindset. So what that entailed was to look at not just counting the calories to say, okay, I have X amount of calories, because it says, well, calories in, calories out is what most people will talk about. Well, you have to know how many calories you're burning before you really can compensate and go back to how many calories in. And for most people, they don't know how much they're burning. So if you eat 1,000, but you're burning 3,000, you got a problem. Or if you're burning 5,000, you got a problem. So what she said to me, she said, here's a small formula I want you to work on and focus with that. And so what I did on the plate, she said, look at your plate. 75% of your plate should be fruit and whole vegetables. 20% of your plate should be protein. And then 5% of your plate could be simple carbs like breads or pastas or white rices. And she said, when you do that, you'll start then to lose weight along with working out and building muscle. And so she said, so we want you building muscle. So she got me into increasing my protein through protein shakes and so forth, and started talking to me about how building muscles actually are fueled by glucose. And she said, what would happen is that as the muscles are soaking up the glucose from the food intake, you reduce your insulin spikes, which reduces the body's desire to hold on to fat. And I'm like, okay. I said, but here's the problem. I love Snickers bars and I love Coca-Colas, and I think those things are great. How do I stop doing that? And she said to me, she had 2 cups sitting there. She goes, and the cup on the right is filled with Coca-Cola. The cup on the left is filled with gasoline. Which one do you want to drink? I said, well, obviously the Coca-Cola. Why? Well, I like it. And I said, gasoline is bad for me. She said, all right, I'm going to swap these cups around. Now, which cup do you want to drink? And I said, well, I don't know. I don't know which one is Coke and which one is gasoline. And she said, exactly. They're one and the same. So she said, when you start looking at your food and you see the food has bad ingredients and is bad for you, go back to, is it the cup of gasoline or is it the cup of Coca-Cola? And all of a sudden you start to equate the gasoline equivalent to the Coca-Cola. So in your mind, you start to think, well, this food is not good for me. And then she said, the second thing you do with food, notice how you feel an hour later, 5 hours later, or in some cases the next morning after you get back up. Are your eyes puffy? Do you feel like you've run out of energy and you're sitting there just dying, falling asleep? that's telling you that those foods are short-term fixes for energy, but long-term damage to increase your weight. And so as I started to do that, and then as I started looking at food and realizing that if I was eating carrots, the bag only needed to say carrots. It didn't need to have 14 other names that are 42 miles long, okay? It needed to say carrots. And so I got back into eating the fresh vegetables. When I started looking at the meat, she was teaching me about looking at more grass-fed, grass-finished beef, because she would say that if you have a grain-finished animal that you're eating the animal meat from, you're also taking in some of the same things from the grains that cause the animal to get fat so they could go to slaughter. And she said, so unless you want to go to slaughter with that animal, you might not want to eat what he's eating, okay? And so those were the kind of things that I started looking at and realizing that I needed to look at my food more seriously. And the sad part I see with people that I've helped in the past is that they don't understand the food itself and how it's going to help their body. You know, what do they need the protein? What do they need the fiber in their diet? What's going to help them with that? And when you start understanding it doesn't take a lot. You don't have to have a PhD to understand that. But when you start understanding how the fiber reduces the absorption of the glucose into your bloodstream, and that reduces your insulin spikes, and all of a sudden, that simple formula starts to help you look at things differently and how you take it in. Now, all of a sudden, losing the weight becomes easy. So all my friends were like, you're losing all this weight. This makes no sense. This is like, you don't even look like you're working hard. And I go, I'm not, because when I look at something like a cup of Coca-Cola, in my mind now, I see a cup of gasoline. So I don't even miss it. I don't even miss it. And so it took a little bit of time, like I said, 18 months. But as I started working my way through it, those things just went out of my head and it was done. So I changed my mindset about food with that. So that's a great question. So I'm glad you asked that.
That's fantastic. So was she just your practitioner
She was a GP who was interested in nutrition. I'm sorry to say I can't remember her name. I wanted to put her name in my book and I could not find her name. She'd retired. I could not find her name, and I'm sorry to say that I couldn't, because she really turned my life around. Was
she a GP that had maybe studied some functional nutrition or functional medicine? Because that's advanced.
Yeah, she'd gone back to schools because she was seeing that people's nutrition habits were contributing so much to their common aches and pains and diseases that it fascinated her, and that's what she got into doing that, and that's why she did that.
And you talked about kind of 25% protein, but then also kind of followed up with increasing protein content. Do you look at, and a lot of people are now talking about, hey, it's a protein first diet. I actually saw Gabrielle Lyons speak,
Right.
Dr. Gabrielle Lyons,
Right.
At A4M recently, and she's, protein, like you calculate the protein and then you feel the gaps. Is that where you're at, or are you still kind of at the 25% protein?
So for me, it's like, so when I'm maintaining my weight, and so to kind of piggyback off what I was talking about, so I lost that weight. I got to my 105 loss at 1998. So then she said to me, cut my vegetables back to 65%, increase my protein up to 30% to maintain that weight. Now that worked because from 1998 to 2020, my weight never changed, maybe more than a pound. Okay. So Gabrielle Lyons is correct. And what most people are missing is that we're missing protein big time. Everybody talks about carbs. Everybody talks about, the fats and so forth. The protein is what people are missing. It's a missing building blocks in their diet. And so for me, when I'm talking to someone older, it's about building muscle mass. It's about increasing the protein. But the complex carbs, which are your fruits and vegetables, become important for that fiber context of it. You see, and it's like if you don't have the fiber there, which creates a gelatinous coating on the inside walls of the intestines, now your blood system is getting a full rush of the glucose as you eat food, which that increases insulin spikes. And that insulin is a hormone that signals to the brain to, let's just store this on your sides, let's store this on your belly or whatever. But the protein is important because as you're building muscle mass, what glucose does get through, the muscles themselves are going to soak that up as fuel. Yep. And so then literally as more and more studies are coming out today, building muscle mass actually causes people to lose more weight than the regular cardio. A lot of people, when they want to lose weight, first thing they do is, I'm going to run 22 miles. And what they're finding is that the weight training actually has a better benefit on losing weight than the cardio does. Not that
Yeah.
cardio is bad. It's just that looking at if you're losing weight, that's the key thing they're finding.
All right, excellent. So you've got this advice.
Hmm.
You're suffering from back pain. Do you remember, like, what caused that back pain? Was it kind of
Oh, yeah.
excessive weight? Like you're
No.
struggling to get out of your car, as I heard in one interview?
Yeah. So no, and this is something that's been a primary thing that, as I learned over time, I thought I had a back issue.
Mm.
Even though my back hurt, I did not have a back issue. I had the front of my thigh issue. So most of our lives we're sitting in front of computers, we're sitting in our cars, we're sitting a lot more than we're standing up and moving around in most cases. And so for me, what had happened over the years of sitting and sitting and sitting, and then when I started working out, working on my legs, making them stronger, I tightened my 4 quadricep muscles on the front of my thighs. The importance of that is that because they cross over they attach below the kneecap and come up and attach into the backside of the pelvis, when those quads get tight from sitting for long periods of time, that literally pulls the pelvis forward, which increases that natural curve in the small of your back. So when you stand back up and you want to stand up straight, you've got to contract the muscles on the lower back to fight with the quads on the front. And until they give, and usually they give once you start walking around a little bit, the muscles on the backside go into a spasm, and that's where the pain comes from. And that causes compression on that low back curve that can lead somewhere down the line to bulging disc and herniated disc and pinched nerves. So when you look at the human body, the muscles are the only thing that can apply pressure to the bones. That's how you sit in your chair. That's how you stand up and you walk around. And so when you've got those muscles on the front of your thighs that are in a contracted state, now what happens is it just pulls the pelvis forward. As people age, and you'll see them leaning forward more and more, as that pelvis continues to pull forward because they're sitting in their recliners and their easy chairs all day long, trying to stand up straight, they don't have enough strength on the backside of their body, and they don't have enough flexibility on the front side to stand up straight. They think it's an aging problem. That's a lifestyle problem.
Mm. Yeah, well, as so many of actual aging problems are. All right, so you got this back pain. What ultimately led you into body work? I think it's kind of a journey that starts, becoming a masseuse, right? Like that was a focus.
Yeah. So what happened was my wife and I were talking, and I just retired from my corporate job. I took an early retirement. And I said, I want to do something. I don't know what it is, but I want to do something that's kind of will help me, but maybe help other people. And I went to this massage school to sign up for it. And the guy said to me, it's a rolling enrollment. He said, what I would do, he said, I would just take like a little student loan out. And when you're done, just pay for it when you're done. Cause I was going to pay cash for it. And I said, all right, I can do that. But he said, it may take you 3-4 weeks before you get in. So this was on a Wednesday. So the guy calls me on a Friday and he said, can you start Monday? And I go, yeah. Because, man, everything just rolled right on through. And I go, okay, sure, we can do that. So when I got into school and I walked in the door the first day, I can remember looking as they were talking about the muscles, they were talking about things that was going on. And I'm telling you, it was like a divine intervention. It's like I knew things that I had no idea how I knew them. And I was almost scary in the beginning. And so during that 2-year period of time, as I was learning neuromuscular massage and sports massage, things just kept coming and coming and coming to me. The right people would show up at the right time. The right thing I needed would show up at the right time. And so it just seemed like an obvious thing for me. And it's like I said before, I'd always worked corporate America, so I was never into the health side of it. This was like a whole new world, okay? And I said to my wife, something weird is going on here. And then towards the end of my college career with them, they said to me, you need to meet a guy named Aaron Mattis. He's got a special stretching type stuff he does called active isolated stretching. I think you guys could be good with each other. And I said, all right, I'll give him a call. So I called him on a Sunday. He was in New York doing a seminar, and he said to me, I've been waiting to hear from you for 6 months, man. Your teachers have been talking to me right and left. And he said, why don't you meet me tomorrow morning? So I did, and we talked for a little bit, and he said, I'd like for you to study with me for about 6 months. And I did, and learned what he was doing on the stretching side. And that's where my knowledge on the stretching started to change. And then I saw some things that through massage with the stretching and then with the mind, I took it and went straight on from there.
Excellent. And so I think, as I heard in another interview, you started kind of getting involved with seniors, and so talk a little bit about that, because I think
Yeah.
it's an important aspect of your journey.
Yeah. So when I finished school there and I was studying with there, and I wanted some place that I could be where people had chronic pain. And I thought, what better place than the senior center? But my wife had volunteered at a senior friendship center here for like 30 years. And I happened to know the CEO. I was talking to her one day, and she goes, "You should come into our medical department and work with the retired physicians." And I'm like, all right. So I get there and I started thinking, I'm just a massage therapist. So to talk to physicians, they're not ever going to talk to me. So I was working on people. I had my room working on people. So one day I'm sitting there in the senior center, and two doctors came in and sat down beside me while I was eating lunch. And they said, "What are you doing in that room?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I'm thinking, good or bad, you know? And the guy said, it's good. He said, "But people are coming out different." And I said, "Well, I was new." And I said, "Let me show you. I can show you better than I can tell you at this point." And so by the time I got in there, I had 8 physicians with me, and I was showing them what I was doing, how I was working with the patients. And they signed right on. The next thing I know, they had me in doctors' meetings, having conversations about the spine and the joints and so forth. And I was just blown away, because I'm thinking, I'm a massage therapist. I mean, these guys forgot more than I know, you know.
Yeah.
But when I would give talks about the muscles and what I was doing, what I quickly realized was that the way we teach people about muscles, we're missing a large gap. And it was not surprising to have 5 or 6 doctors show me their MRIs or their X-rays at the end of the meeting to see what I thought, you know, and which was a big ego booster for me at that point. But it was the whole ride has just been an amazing trip, amazing journey at this point.
So I've had enough conversations, and actually I saw a video with Peter Attia the other day, and he was talking about, across the board from the interviews I've done, doctors get zero nutritional education, right?
That's
And
true.
so the first piece of already what we've talked about today is the
Yeah.
doctor, and I kind of pointed out that
Right.
practitioner had a different focus, because most
Right.
practitioners don't.
Right.
And then the next one is exercise. The video I saw with Peter Attia, he's like, I got exactly 0 hours of training on
Yeah.
exercise. Would you even separate kind of more specific muscular understanding from exercise? And so now we're dealing with doctors who have zero nutrition, zero exercise, and zero, it can't be zero muscular, if they're an
No, it's not zero,
orthopedist, right?
but it's getting close. Okay, so when I went back to school to studying aging science at the University of South Florida, I was lucky enough to be in a class, 2 anatomy classes with MD students and PT students. And so I got to see how they were teaching. I was in my 50s, how they were teaching muscles. They teach muscles in what are the names of the muscles, where do they attach and insert, what do they move? And so it's strictly from the mechanical side for it. So when you watch most people, whether they're PTs or trainers or whatever, when they're teaching stretching, it's purely about if I take my hand and I grab my leg, like pulling my hamstrings, and I pull really hard, my hamstrings at some point will go, okay, I give, let me go, you know. And that's a flawed way of teaching. And so when you look at your muscles are just as emotional, if not more so, than they are physical. And what I mean by that, think about you you get upset with somebody, or you're frustrated with something, your muscles get tight, shoulders start to rise, your hands, you start gripping in your hands. Some people grip with their face. That's a psychological or emotional part of the muscles that is in that fight or flight, so that if the building was catching on fire, my brain goes, hey, we got to get out of here. My legs wouldn't go back and go, you know what? I don't want to run today. And then you're stuck. Okay. So the brain has to be in control of the muscles on an emotional basis so that you can protect yourself and keep yourself alive. When it comes to teaching people about muscles in a school setting, we don't talk about that. And when I've had discussions with physicians about it, they would say, well, that's psychology. And I go, well, it is psychology, but it's affecting us on a mechanical basis. Sort of like if a tiger is chasing you across the yard, you're not going to stop to go to the bathroom. You're not going to stop to get anything to eat, because your brain says, forget all that. We're about to die here. We got to get out of here. And so when you're dealing with pain, it's the same kind of scenario. And if you watch people, a lot of times when they're dealing with pain, they don't have much of an appetite. They become constipated. They become all kinds of different things. And what's happening is that from the muscle standpoint, the brain is blocking everything and contracting muscles, trying to stop the pain in their body. And so from a physician standpoint, from a PT standpoint, we're not really talking about that. And so when I started talking about it in anatomy classes, I had two of them at USF, when I was talking about that, both professors said to me, would you, if I give you an hour, would you talk about that in class? Because I've never heard anything about that. And I was like shocked. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, sure, it'd be great. And so I spent each of the classes, and then one of the professors asked me if I would write a paper. She helped me with looking up peer-reviewed studies to support the paper. We found virtually nothing in peer-reviewed studies on the emotional side of muscles, which is really kind of scary. Because like, for instance, I work a lot with people who have knee replacements and hip replacements and so forth. You don't just get up Friday morning, my knee hurts, and go to the doctor at 1 o'clock and he replaces my knee and I go back home. So it usually takes months or so to get there. So what happens is the knee pain, for instance, is hurting. The brain then changes the way it recruits muscles to move to give you the least amount of pain as you move. Once they replace that knee, they do get you back up on your feet. You can do your activities of daily living, but the person typically walks badly and over time may damage their hip or may damage the other knee. And so what we want to do is be able to retrain them how to walk correctly, because the doctor who replaced the knee usually adjusts the knee so it's straight. The problem is that the person that lives in that body isn't used to walking straight. They're used to walking on the outside or the inside of their foot to stop the pain. And you have to change that. So just like with the dieting we talked about earlier, you can go on a diet and lose all the weight you want, but if you don't learn that certain foods are good for you, certain foods are bad for you, you're just going to gain it back. And how many times have we known, everybody's known people who've lost 10, 15, 20 pounds and gained that back in 5 pounds more. And so the same thing is true in the muscles. Because it's such an emotional part of our body, we have to learn how to use the brain to make that happen.
Well, one, I just want to kind of segue here. You're talking about knee replacement, hip replacements, having the right alignment.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion about knee replacements, hip replacements that might look like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. You should actually be fixing how you walk?
So in the beginning stages, yeah. What happens is by the time most of the people I work on are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, by the time they get to the point of getting their knee replaced, they've done so much damage to the knee because of the bad walking. But if you start before you have the pain and you start having those problems, you could actually avoid a lot of those knee replacements and hip replacements that are being done out there. When you look at, for instance, something like the calf muscles, most people think of a calf as a single muscle. So you'll see them lean against the wall with 1 foot further behind them, or they'll stand on a slant board, or they'll drop their heel off of a step. They think they're stretching their calves. They're actually stretching their Achilles tendon. The calf muscles actually have 4 major calf muscles. And so the calf muscles control the foot vertically, laterally for balance, and rotationally, for instance, because you have 2 bones in that lower leg. If the muscles in the calf and in between those 2 bones are tight, what happens is they try to rotate their body. It starts to grind the knee, because then you have 2 bones going into one at the knee joint, okay? So as they get tight like that and the muscles are crossing over the joints, the body naturally puts what's called a synovial fluid, which is like a WD-40 for lubrication and for like a cushioning agent in the knee. It does it in all the joints that you have. And the more movement you have, the more you get that synovial fluid. But over time, as those muscles are tight like that, since the calf muscles cross over the knee to attach to the thigh, and the muscles in the thighs come down and attach to the lower leg, as they get tight, it pushes that joint closer together, squeezing out that synovial fluid. So people talk about cartilage. It broke off the cartilage. Well, the reason cartilage is there is that the ends of the bones are much softer than the middle of the bones. And that cartilage over that is like a hard shell to protect it. And as long as you have synovial fluid and spacing, you're good. But if you lose that synovial fluid and now it starts banging on each other, you pop it right off. That's where people get in trouble. Throw in and they weigh another 60, 70, 80 pounds, and that's an even bigger problem. But that thing, just understanding that with the muscles, as you free those muscles up and you allow those muscles to actually be able to extend. In other words, they're not lengthening. You're never lengthening muscles. Muscles are probably the best way to think about that, because everybody talks about we're lengthening muscles when we're stretching. Think of a rubber band. You take a rubber band, put it between your fingers. If I twist the rubber band, it's going to get shorter and shorter and shorter as I twist it, okay? If I untwist it, it goes back to the original length. So it's never going to be longer. It's never going to start here. And by me pulling it, it's going to stay there. It's going to always come back. Muscles are the same way. So what happens is everything we think, feel, and do every single day, we're twisting those muscles like that rubber band every day. Okay. And what we need to do with stretching is learn how to unwind those muscles. And as we do that, now we take the pressure off the joints, we take the pressure off the disc, and the synovial fluid can go back in those two areas and allow us to live better without the pain, without the pressure. Because if you think about muscles, if muscles stopped working, you'd be a quadriplegic. You lay on the bed like a wet dish rag. You couldn't get up off the bed, right? So the muscles then have to be able to be activated to be able to put pressure on the bones so that you can even just sit up in the chair like you are now.
Hey, super quick break from the podcast. Hopefully you're loving it. This is a way you can support the podcast and take advantage of a great offer. We're offering 50% off of one of our MCT bottles. MCT is an amazing oil. Add the ESS 60 molecule to it. It's even more amazing. All you got to do is leave a review on iTunes, send us a notification that you've left that review. We'll get you a coupon code that'll get you 50% off of our MCT oil and free shipping. Back to the podcast.
So you've tickled a lot of ideas for me. So one, I've had calf problems for probably 20, 25 years. I can be in the middle of a 3-mile run, so 1.5 miles in, so it's not a muscle warmth issue. I'm well in. And the way I describe it is it feels like a fiber in the very center of my calf just knots up, right? And I can actually do toe raises, no problem. I can do weighted toe raises, but as soon as I'm pushing forward, like then it doesn't work. And that happened pretty recently because I was doing some dumb stuff, and it was pretty bad. I actually really had kind of severe tender. My Achilles was super tender, and I ended up doing a technology called Newbie by NewFit, the new company. I don't know if you're familiar with them, and then some deep tissue massage. And I kind of have the ultimate picture that, and it was 30 minutes on each calf. Like this was deep, and it was painful, tear jerking, all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I have this impression that the deep tissue massage really could have broken it up and relaxed the calf. How would you compare and contrast like deep tissue massage, which I'm sure you also do, right? And stretching, like what do you see one as more important, or where do those kind of juxtapose together?
I've been trained in deep tissue massage. I don't do deep tissue massage because I understand the emotional effect. When you get people who are laying there crying in pain, their brain is contracting muscles to stop the pain. Number two, they might break up a few things while you're there, but you live your life with that body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the minute you get up off that table and you walk out to your car, you're tightening them right back up again. Okay. So in comparison with the stretching with the lighter massage, when you're looking at the stretching, instead of trying to pull muscles like we're trying to pull taffy, for instance, what we're doing is in the stretching, and I do it with a yoga strap. You're gonna sit down on the floor with your back against the wall, one leg out in front of you, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna put the strap around the ball of your foot, and as you pull the toes back towards you, when you first start to feel that tension, stop. Breathe out, hold for about 5 seconds, give the brain that 5 seconds to see that it's safe. Release it, and you're going to come back and do that 10 times. And as you do that each time, the brain's going to be like, oh yeah, we were okay there. That's fine. You'll notice your toes will start to come back more. Once you've done the 10, now you rotate, say, the leg outward, do the same thing, but you're going to feel it more to the inside calf muscle. Because remember, as a runner, you're not just going to run straight lines. You're going to turn corners, right? And you'll do 10 times there. And then you're going to rotate the leg inward, and you're going to do the outside calf muscle. Now, the interesting thing with this is that when I first got into doing this and learning about all this, I would get people with plantar fasciitis. That's the pain in your heel. You can barely walk when you
I'm very familiar with this, yes.
So I've had people in their 60s and 70s that I've gotten rid of that in 2 to 3 days.
Wow.
With the yoga strap. Okay? So the thing is that once you understand how to do this, and then you now can do this on a daily basis, because stretching is a daily thing. It's like watch a dog or a cat. Every day they'll stretch several times a day. And the reason they do that is to keep their muscles loose. And we need to do the same thing. Most people think of stretching as when I feel tight or when something hurts. But the truth of the matter is, if you get into a habit of doing this each morning and each evening, what you're going to find out is that the muscles then will stay looser for you. You're less likely to have injuries. Now, the other part of the thing, when you look at what you were talking about, as well as with the plantar fasciitis, our shoes play a massive role in the damage it happens to people's feet and to their knees, okay? When you look at your foot has 33 joints in it with 29 muscles. The arch of your foot is working nothing more than like a spring. So when you step down running, that arch needs to have the flexibility to be able to flex so that as you come down and those 33 joints start to open up, you take the impact off the knee and put it onto the foot. The problem is that people sell you shoes that have arch supports and heel supports and thick, comfortable soles so you feel like you're walking on air, okay? That negates so much of the flexibility of your arch, number one. The thicker soles prevent the ankle from bending through its full range of motion. So instead of pushing off with your toes, you're actually pushing off with your thighs, which will later create stuff like back issues and neck issues. And then lastly, if it has a tapered toe to it, it prevents the toes from spreading, which over time will start to affect your balance. So when you look at a good shoe that you can walk around in, you need to have a shoe that you can fold in half and stick in your pocket. Okay? And it needs to have a wide toe on it. Now, if you've never worn something like that, don't go out and buy it today and start wearing it tomorrow on a 10-mile hike and think you're going to be fine, because the muscles in your feet are just they're not right for that, okay? So what I do is I teach people how to properly massage their feet, how to get their calves working as well. And when you do that, now all of a sudden, when you walk, you're pushing off with your toes the way you're supposed to, using the arch in your foot the way it was designed to be used. You know, a lot of times you hear doctors say, never walk on a hard surface barefoot because it's bad for you. Now, that's just not true. I'm 65 years old. I do it all the time on tile floors in my house. And I never have a foot issue. And the people that I work on, 60, 70, 80 years old, do the same thing without foot issues. But it's understanding, again, how that brain works with the muscles and understanding how you let those muscles go mentally as well as physically. Because once you let go mentally, you let go physically. If you don't let go mentally, you can't let go physically. And that's where people make a big mistake with that.
So I just kind of review. So
Yeah.
your thought is your back is against the wall. Are you trying to be at a 90 or just have some support?
So with your back against the wall, you want to be at a 90 degree to your one leg that's extended in front of you. And the reason for that is that if you don't have that wall, or you're not sitting in a hard back chair with an ottoman, when you try to pull your toes back, most people, the first mistake they make is they will try to pull with their back and not with their arms. Okay.
Right.
And what I want, because at that point you take yourself out of the stretch. The second mistake people make is, even though their back is 90 degrees, they want to pull so hard with their arm that they literally lift their leg up off the floor. And I always laugh and I go, well, your biceps are going to look great, but your calves not getting stretched. So that's the thing, is we've been trained so much to really manhandle our muscles. And the reality is that we're actually fighting with our brain and not our muscles. And you've heard people talk about muscle memory, for instance. You're really fighting with your brain, not your muscles, when you're stretching. Yeah.
So my back is 90 degrees, right, against a wall.
Yeah.
My thought process is I'm wrapping this yoga strap across my toes, but you're saying you're wrapping it at your heel.
No, you're wrapping it around the ball of your foot.
The ball of your foot. Okay. In my head, I went to heel. It translated improperly, right? So not toes, but just under toes, right? So the ball of your feet. And then you're just pulling back until you feel some tension, some slight, right? Holding it for 5 seconds.
Yep.
And then when you rotate out, are you rotating that? You're rotating that at the hip effectively, right?
Yeah. So you're going to let the leg just fall right out as you're rotating out from the hip down. And then that puts you in where you can stretch the inside calf muscle.
Okay. Excellent. Frankly, that was one of the things I wanted to get out of this interview, because literally 25 years of calf problems is, and I feel like they're managed with monthly deep tissue or whatever that may be. But, if I can work on some ways that can avoid it.
You can manage it yourself. Yeah.
I do have to work on compliance. I'm not the
Yeah.
best patient.
But the thing is where people have trouble with compliance sometimes is that we've made it sound so hard. And I'm telling you, it's like when I can sit with my friends talking, cross my leg and sitting in a chair and just use my hands as I'm just gently just working on the muscles in my leg to soften them up. And what's funny is they're telling me about all their problems, and I'm working up. They have no idea what I'm doing. I'm softening muscles in my leg, and I'll say to them, "This is what you ought to do." Oh, that'll never work for me. I go, "Sure it will. You just have to learn how to do it. That's all." And the thing is that don't make it hard. If it's not hard and you start to feel better, the doing it becomes easy. If it hurts like heck and puts tears in your eyes, nobody wants to do that. And so when I first started with the plantar fasciitis thing was like one of the big things that hit me right off the bat. My first thought was, well, maybe I was lucky. Maybe I was lucky 3 times. Maybe I was lucky 10 times. But after 20 years of seeing people from age 30 to 90, and you see that within 2 to 5 days, they come back and it's like, I don't have any more leg pain. My foot pain is gone. And it's like, that is insane. And it's like, so even after 20 years in, I still look at this stuff and it's like, that's insane. So the funny thing with the calf is golf is, I get a lot of golfers down here in Florida. Most back paining golfers start in their calves. And the way I figured it out was this back golfer I had kept having back pain, and I'm working on his quads, I'm working on his inner thighs, and nothing seems to be changing. And I got into his calves, and his calves were rock hard. And I got into his hamstrings. There's 3 hamstrings, rock hard. And when I opened those up, he came back and he said to me, not only has the pain gone, he said, now over the last 30 days, I'm hitting the ball 15 to 20 yards farther because he's rotating from his ankle up, not from the hip. That's the thing that we're missing. The mechanics part of it is what we're missing.
I had somebody tell me the other day that actually quads are a big, so tight quads, because we're sitting all day, can have a dramatic impact on calves as well. Is that something that you find to be true as well?
Not so much on calves, but a lot on low back and neck. Yeah, neck pain as well.
Very interesting. So we've actually talked about a couple things, right? You talked about muscle and muscle building, and now we've talked about flexibility. I always like to talk about there are 4 types of exercise that you should be doing on a regular basis to combat old age. That is resistance training, muscle building. I believe you should be sore, and not horribly sore, but sore at least 2 days a week. VO2 max training. So how do you get your heart rate and your breathing up? Balance and flexibility. Given you're in a unique position, how would you juxtapose resistance training, the importance of the muscle and its flexibility? Where does that land for you?
So for me, it's like when you look at resistance training for muscles, think of it in terms of your car. Resistance training is like putting fuel in your car. It actually gives you the power. The flexibility is like putting oil in the engine for lubrication. So you can have all the power that you want. But if you don't have the flexibility, your ability to go through your full range of motion to use all of that power is missing. That's a big part of it. When you have flexibility and you have strength training, you now have the muscles there to actually balance you much better. The VO2 max is a good thing to do to keep your heart rate, to keep your cardiovascular system up and running well. It's a good thing. But finally, what I would put in here is the nutrition. The nutrition is the building blocks for all of that. And I think that as people get older, instead of us telling them to slow down, we need to tell them to speed up. Because by age 35, 40, we start losing close to 1% muscle mass per year that we're alive. And so what we need to do is make sure that, we keep our strength up so that we have the ability to pick ourselves up out of a chair when we're 65, 70 years old. We have the ability to get up off the floor. We have the ability to walk around the mall without feeling like we have to sit somewhere because we're exhausted. When we do those things, now the body can function at a high level. So I'm very fortunate as I work with many people who are in their late 80s and up to mid 90s who are doing really well. In fact, I have one guy who's 96 years old. He started a small cattle ranch at 87, built a house, the ranch, everything, built an incredible hydroponics farm at 87. At 96, he's still running the farm by himself. But the interesting thing is he works out 3 to 4 days a week. He plays tennis 2 to 3 days a week. His diet, he's always eating food in his diet that keeps him healthy. He's got a purpose every day. He's got something to do every day. And that plays a massive role with that. And so the thing is, yeah, we're doing things that help us live longer lifespan wise. We're not doing as well when it comes to healthy lifespan. And it's the healthy lifespan that's killing us. And it's like, so if the healthy lifespan is 48, 49 years old and you live to be 78, well, you've got 30 years of sickness that you've got to go with. And typically for most people, that last 10 or 15 years is not a fun group of years there. Okay. And it's very expensive. Yeah. So what we want to do is, especially for your younger audiences, start looking now at how can I start creating those building blocks. It's no different than saving money for your financial life, but how can I build these building blocks so when I'm 60, 70, and 80, I can still be working well. And I think that when we look at our healthcare, that is something that we've got to really focus on. And muscle, it gets overlooked a lot. I mean, most of what you read about muscle is on strength training. Muscle plays such a massive role. When you can stand up and you can stand up straight, emotionally, you feel better, you feel younger, you can do more things. And when you don't hurt, when you go out to do something, life is good.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into my next question, where there is this kind of thought process that pain is inevitable, right? I know my mom, and she worked in the healthcare space, and one day, I think it was kind of an 87-year-old gentleman was there, and she overheard the practitioner, the PA was, "Hey, so do you have any pains?" And his answer was, "I'm 87 years old. I ache everywhere," right? And I don't think that's where you land. I don't think you believe that pain is inevitable. What would you say to somebody who some people have been experiencing pain, some of your clients have been experiencing it for a long time. What would you kind of encourage them to focus on if that's something that they've been struggling with?
Number one is move. You got to move. We were never designed to sit for the long periods of time that we're sitting. Beliefs, a belief system. And I mean, how many times have you heard as you get older? When I was turned 50, my friends would say to me, "You wait till you turn 50, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be horrible." And I like, well, should I commit suicide at 49 and just not go there? And then when I turned 50, it's like, all right, I woke up today, I didn't feel anything, Well, you wait till you're 55. And it's like our mindset is we're sitting and waiting for the pain to happen so we don't get disappointed. And the thing is that, yeah, you'll have the occasional ache here, pain there, or something like that. But we had it when we were 15 to 16 years old. We stubbed our toe. We fell down somewhere and hurt our knee. That's normal living, normal aging. And even as a teenager, you're still aging. The thing is that when it becomes constant and chronic, people are trying to stop their chronic pain with a pill, with an injection. And again, like we talked about at the beginning of this, doctors don't get trained in nutrition. They're not getting trained in exercise. How in the world can you expect a man or a woman who's a physician to talk to you about getting in good health if all they know is medication? Okay. And when you go to the medical schools, the health schools of different type, they teach you how to stop the pain, which is treating the symptom. We need to be treating the real cause. And I remember I had one of the doctors that was at the Friendship Center, the senior center that I had started with. She was a retired neurosurgeon. And she said to me, one of the things that most doctors make a mistake is they shoot a scan and they look for something that they've been trained to fix in surgery. They go in and they fix it, but they never ask the question, what truly caused that to happen? It wasn't because they're 72. It wasn't because they're 62. It wasn't because they just have bad luck in most cases. It has a lot to do with lifestyle. And if you don't understand what caused that to happen, especially with the spine, it's just going to show up somewhere else. And so it's like your calves become tight. All of a sudden, as your calves become tight, you take shorter and shorter strides. Now your quads become tight. Your upper body starts to tilt forward. The low back starts to hurt. Sooner or later, the head starts to lean out in front of your chest and your neck and shoulders are hurt. Now you're walking around like an old guy with your head out over your chest and your stride gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And you think that's old age. And what happened was you didn't know how to bend your ankles. And nobody told you how to do that. But they have a shoe for you that'll help the pain in your foot. They have a brace for your knee. They have a brace for your back, and they have injections they can give you. All of that is a Band-Aid to treat the pain so that you just don't complain about the pain. And people have accepted that. And that's a major mistake because it costs us a lot of money. So the example I always give to my clients is like, okay, you're a mechanic and you're repairing cars, the bodies on cars, and a person comes in every Friday and the right fender is dented. You know how to replace the fender. That's what your expertise is. But what if you stopped for a second and thought, well, maybe this person's blind in the right eye? Find the cause, stop the pain.
Yeah, I think you really do need to be careful about your mindset into old age. A couple of kind of quick stories. Read an article. It was Men's Health magazine. The cover said, your metabolism slows down as you age, which really made me angry. Like I've had 125 on my radar forever. I don't know where I got the number. I don't know how old I was, but that was the number. And then I go and read the article, and the entire article is about, no, you slow down. And as soon as it didn't even matter how old you were, if you sped up, your metabolism speeds up, right?
Yep.
I have 15-year-old twins, and I'm very conscious about all of these things that people will say, oh, I walk into a room and I forget what I was in the room for. It's because I'm getting old. No, my 15-year-old twins do the exact same thing.
Same thing, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you have done it all along.
Yeah.
You now have been wired to believe that it's because of old age. It's I don't know. It's just something that has always happened, and you're wired to believe now it's happening because of old age. Back then, it was happening because you're human. Like that's why these things happen.
Yes.
Also, kind of last one is pain. My son played soccer. He complained about being sore. He complained about pain. As you're older, he's like, I'm sore because I'm, old. No, you're actually sore probably because you're moving less, right? Like, and my son's moving every day, soccer training, and he's still sore and hurts.
Yeah.
You hurt because you're not moving that much. It's not because you're older. So I really love the message that you're bringing here. I do very selfishly need to ask one thing. I have some tennis elbow. What's the stretch I need to be doing?
Tennis elbow. That's a great one. I have a doctor here in town that his wife had that, and he sent her to me. He'd been working on her for 3 months, and the next morning he called me up and he goes, "What did you do?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Her tennis elbow went away." And so when you look at your forearm up here, from your elbows to the tips of your fingers, you have 26 muscles here. So you have 2 bones in here. So the muscles from up at your elbow there, you feel like a knot here and a knot here. Well, there's a knot here where 5 muscles come down to your fingers and allows you to open your hands. You have 5 muscles come through the carpal tunnel, allows you to close your hands. So what happens, you get pain up here, is that as you grip things with your hand, the muscles get tight. And so when you're trying to grip from down here, if the muscles on the top side get tight, it actually creates pain there, not here, as you grip things. Okay. And then when you try to rotate your hand, you see you have the 5 carpal bones in your wrist. As you try to rotate your hand, you've got these muscles here that are rotating all around as you're doing that. So what you want to do is take your fingers right along the edge here. You can feel the muscle there. And just gently as you press in, you press into where you feel a little bit of discomfort there or a little bit of pain. Stop there, hold it, breathe out. And then I just sort of rotate my right hand right up into these fingers here. Okay.
Yeah.
And as you start to do that, you're going to work your way all the way down your arm. Now, you don't have to press so hard like you're trying to press your fingers through your arm. Okay. We just want enough that you can feel it. Okay. And then you start to rotate down here and you just slowly come down, and you've got muscles all along into here. So you're going to work all the way around from this bone here, all the way around up to the bone onto the top as you're doing that. Now you also have muscles on, let me see if I can stand up here so you can see better what I'm doing. You also have muscles that are down into here. You've got 5 muscles here coming through the carpal tunnel that control the hands this way. And so you just take your hand and just rotate just like that.
So just for the audience who's listening, right? He's palm up. He's got thumb kind of midway between the elbow and the palm, and is pressing into that meaty section and then rotating.
Yes. And I've got this all on video on my YouTube channel, the Best Forearm Massage. You want this to be soft. You don't want Popeye arms. This has to be soft so that no matter how, in other words, when the muscles are soft, no matter how hard you press, you can press all the way to the bone and feel no pain. Okay.
Yep.
And that's the optimal place. You're not going to stay there, but that's the optimal place. And so as you're working down your arm like this here, you start to free that back up. And then that allows the hand then, as you grip the hand, for these muscles to move properly. You do that for 2 or 3 days, it'll take it right out. I typically, because I use my hand so much every day, I'll work on mine sitting at a stoplight waiting for it to turn green.
Yep.
So by the time I go home, it's free and ready to go again. But I work on sometimes 8 to 10 people a day. All my friends who are in therapy, they'll talk about how their hands and arms and elbows hurt. I never have that pain.
Because you're always doing the right
I'm always
stretch.
doing everything I teach you. Yep. Everything I teach you, I do myself.
Stretch and release. Title of your book. That's awesome. I think you even have some sort of special, like if they buy the book, they have access to something. Is that correct?
Yes. If they buy the book, you have access to all of my videos, which are on my YouTube channel. There's a QR code in the book. You can get to all of those videos to be able to do that. And I have a newsletter that if you sign on to, you can get a ebook with the 5 most critical stretches for the human body to do each day that you can join the newsletter. Now in the newsletter, and this is sort of the same format I do with the videos, but in the newsletter, I'll attack certain things like carpal tunnel or elbow tendonitis. I'll talk about why you have that pain, why do most treatments either fall short or fail, and then how can you solve that? And then I'll put 2 videos in that newsletter that will literally show you exactly how to do that. And on my YouTube videos, I do the same thing. I'll talk about calf stretches or I'll talk about hamstring stretches, and I'll do the same thing when you have those ailments. Now, what I'm getting ready to start, should start the first of the year, is a membership so that you can have, I'm going to have live Q&As that people can get on and talk to me about that. But I want to do a deeper dive onto the stretches to really get to people and understand how to use their mind when they're doing that, because that seems to be that was the toughest thing for people to be able to do.
So it's almost kind of a stretch and meditation kind of intersection. Does that sound Very cool?
Yeah, that release actually comes from, as you relax the mind, the body follows.
So we're about to get into our wrap-up questions. Before we get them started, is there anything that we kind of missed that you wanted to emphasize or touch on?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing that I think we haven't talked about yet is when people do traditional stretching, they tend to try to stretch groups of muscles. They want to do the hip, the thigh, and the calf all at the same time. And understanding that, your body works in different ways. So for instance, when you're looking at rotation of the body, you're rotating with those 4 calf muscles, you're rotating with the 3 hamstrings. And, a lot of times when people are doing a hamstring stretch, they're trying to stretch all 3 at the same time, and it becomes frustrating because they can't free them up. And so what happens is that if one of the 3 hamstring muscles are tighter than the other 2, that one can stop you from having that freedom of movement, which keeps the hips joints and the knee joints lubricated. So the thing is that when people are thinking about their muscles, they think that they're just not a flexible person. And what I say to people all the time is, you're just as flexible as anybody else. The thing is that your mind, because you've had pain trying to do something, won't let you do it. So if you do splits every single day, your brain's going to be like, I can show you how to do that. And boom, you go into a split. Okay. But if you've never done a split and somebody says, hey, Chris, I want you to do a split for us, you'd be like, holy cow, that won't be fun. That's going to be bad. The mind won't let you do that. So anytime you've tried to stretch with what they call static stretching, which is what we traditionally learn in high school and elementary school, where you get in, you hold it and you hold and hold and hold for 30, 40, 50 seconds at a time, and you're pulling with all your might because you think your muscles have decided they don't want to work with you. What I'm telling you, you're not fighting with your muscles, you're fighting with your mind. And once you learn to relax the mind and realize that the mind plays such a massive role with your flexibility, you'll be surprised how your body will change, even with artificial joints. I mean, I've watched people, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and it's not a day I don't leave that I don't go, wow, I can't believe what I saw today. And it's just to see people 70, 80, 90 years old come in like a child, let me show you what I can do. I mean, it's mind blowing, and it's like, how do we miss it? Because it's like my thing in my head is all these people with all this education, they just didn't ask that question. And how I got that, I was just fortunate enough to have the right mentors that put the right things in my head that I put together. And I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut and my ears open.
Yeah, starting back when you were 19, when the doctor said soft tissue, right? Like soft tissue is the problem.
Had
That's
no
pretty
idea what he
cool.
was talking about at the time.
Very cool. All right, here are our wrap-up questions. Butch, do you have a target age that you want to live to?
Yes, I want to live to 120, healthy.
I love it. And how long do you believe humans can live?
I think we can go past 120, probably get to 130, 140, if we do the right things.
Excellent. And what are 2 to 3 protocols, habits, mindsets, let's call them shortcuts because everybody likes shortcuts, for longevity and a long health span that you would share?
Number 1, move. Number 2, be flexible. And number 3, eat the right foods. You wouldn't put water in a gasoline of a Ferrari.
Love it. And are there any things that pop to mind, say 1 or 2 things that people get absolutely wrong regarding longevity and a long health span?
Yes. They believe they can't do it because of their age, and they want to continue doing what they've always done and can't understand why they keep getting what they always got.
Yeah, definition of insanity. Butch, how can people contact you?
There's several different ways. Number 1, you can contact me at my website, musclerepairshop.com. You can check out my YouTube channel, The Muscle Repair Shop. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And again, if you go to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter and you can get that information from there. And I do things online as well. So, even if you don't live in the Sarasota area, we can talk online too to help you get you started.
And they can get the special stuff with the book by buying the book at themusclerepairshop.com.
Is that okay? Shop, yeah. And on Amazon, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Oh yeah, because the QR code's in the book. Excellent. Yes. Butch, what in the near future are you excited about?
I'm really getting excited because this building out of this membership thing where I can really connect with people, because over my 20 years, I've really learned what places in this whole process do they get stuck on. And, I've done a lot on YouTube and I've talked to people from all over the world. To see the changes just from a 15-minute video is just wow. So by being able to get on the live Q&As, being able to dig in deep and really help people from around the world to actually change how they do things. And the thing is you don't need me to be in the room with you. What you need is just to learn a few things that I have to teach you so that you can start changing your life. And I'm just pumped about that, and I want to do more in promoting the book and marketing that book to meet more people. What pleases me more than anything else, and I always say this to my clients who come here, is if I don't see someone for like a year and I see them out at the market or something like that, and they go, I had that back pain. I haven't come back to see you because it hasn't ever come back. I did my job. And that's really what drives me every day.
Excellent. All right. Well, you can find him, musclerepairshop.com. On social media, it's the Muscle Repair Shop. And you can remember, if you buy his book, Stretch and Release, you have access to some videos. There's a QR code in there. Butch, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, man. It's just been fun. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow. Also, make sure not to be that guy, the guy sharing this podcast with people who are not interested in living beyond the norms. If you would like to learn more about the ESS60 molecule, the molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, a full 90% extension of life, visit myvitalc.com. That's myvitalc as in carbon.com.